Welcome to Not Now in Theaters. My name is Will Turntail, and I'm a writer and film fan from California. This episode is all about The Hitcher. It's a horror thriller from 1986 that ages great. This movie had been sitting on my watch list for quite some time. I would see someone on the Blue Sky movie threads mention it once in a while, but I figured, I'll add it to my watch list, but wait a long time since it's just a slasher, which isn't usually my thing. Well, I took the plunge. And no, there's more going on with this movie than I thought. One of the producers who looked at the movie called it Duel with a Person, which I think could be accurate. I've never actually seen Steven Spielberg's Duel, and if you don't know Duel, it's said to be like Jaws with a truck, so I guess that makes Jaws Duel with a truck? We're getting into all sorts of tangents here. Anyhow, I'm excited to get into why this horror movie has different interpretations and yet identifies with a lot of audiences. And of course, it has an all-time great villain in The Hitcher. And apologies to any regular listeners, as this episode is way late. I appreciate any of you who tune in each week. Before we start, a reminder that making films is hard and you have to respect that, so any criticisms are meant to be constructive. This review will contain spoilers. I'll do my best to call them out for you before they come up. Okay, let's get into the movie. The Hitcher 1986 review, The Baddest Rider on the Storm. The Hitcher sat by the film highway, waiting for an audience to take it for a ride. But while the movie had its thumb up, many 1980s audiences were firmly thumbs down. The film got 0 stars from film analyzers Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, and critics like Janet Maslin had unflattering words. The common complaints? The script and the violence. And the movie couldn't get over the line at the box office, finding a reported $5.8 million against its $7.9 million budget. Still, after rolling on a home video and cable, it began to cement a fan base in the horror community. And today, it's like The Hitcher has signed on to Lyft or Uber, because the film has less trouble snagging a ride, enjoying its bona fide cult favorite status. And no, I don't think it's some gore and violence fest audiences weren't quite ready for in the 1980s, but their kids were gonna love it. Inspired by the Doors song Riders on the Storm, the movie's bleak, open road horror show has a poetry that has hooked audiences over the years. So is The Hitcher a good movie? The plot of The Hitcher. Young Jim Halsey is delivering a drive-away car from Chicago to San Diego. When he hits a heavy storm in the West Texas desert, he spies a man in a tall coat with his thumb out, asking for a ride. Against his mom's advice, Jim stops and picks up the man. Minutes later, Jim's passenger, John Ryder, holds a switchblade to his throat. When Jim asks Ryder what he wants, Ryder tells him, "I want you to stop me." In a brave moment, Jim pushes Ryder out the open passenger door, relieved he's saved his skin. But Jim's troubles with Ryder are just beginning. As Ryder stalks Jim across the desert highways, can Jim get the upper hand and stop him? And to walk you through the cast of this fine film, young Jim Halsey is played by young C. Thomas Howell, who you might know from The Outsiders, of course. John Ryder is played by the one and only Rutger Hauer. And you can read the rest of the main cast in the transcript, which includes some great names like Jennifer Jason Leigh or Jeffrey DeMunn. So what's good in this movie? Well, first up, it's get in the car, get in the movie. And this one is worth 3 points. The Hitcher is moving down the plot roads faster than you can microwave a Hot Pocket. Not to preach, but don't actually eat those if you value your life, please. Jim tells John Ryder his mom told him never to pick up a hitchhiker, and then we learn in seconds why mom knows best. The glazed look in Ryder's eyes tells us everything, but he openly admits that he cut the arms and legs off the driver of the stalled car they just passed. Before most audiences have come back with their popcorn, Ryder has a knife to Halsey's throat, and the intensity is high enough for a finale. But it's not just the opening scene that gets you. There's an entire horror movie's worth of chases, murders, and explosions in the first third of the film. And despite blowing up a gas station, the movie continues to find fuel. In Jim's struggle against Ryder, new antagonists, allies, and victims are introduced. The poor kid rarely finds any downtime, and neither do we, the audience. It's not just the pacing we have to appreciate here. Our audience's expectations work into this trick. And a writer's note here, as the movie is titled The Hitcher, and as it is a horror thriller, we, the audience, know this man is trouble. So I appreciated that the movie got into that trouble quickly, staving off the predictability of 10, 20, or 30 minutes of fake outs or time wasting. Next, it's Rutger Hauer Strikes Again, which adds 5 points. Film lovers, may I present to you, if you haven't met him, the great and powerful Rutger Hauer. Voted the best Dutch actor of all time, his prowess in America is well known to fans of cult films. Here, playing the role of psychopathic hitchhiker John Ryder, Hauer creates a minimalistic villain you could carve on the Mount Rushmore of strong, silent slasher types like Michael Myers of Halloween or Anton Chigurh of No Country for Old Men. Is it Chigurh? Chigurh? I don't know how to say it. You probably know Hauer can do the face covered in rain, giving a dramatic and unsettling performance thing because he's done that exact trick memorably in Blade Runner. But in the Hitcher's opening scenes, as Jim picks up Ryder by the side of the road, Hauer does a face all covered in rain that may just top his most famous. Ryder instantly scared the hell out of me, and you know he is toying with Jim from moment one. Hauer's Ryder gets into the car, ignoring questions about where he's headed, asking for a cigarette instead. There's the abject way Ryder pats himself somewhat dry, his concern that he's getting the car all wet instead of responding to Jim. And then he stares at Jim, a deadpan look, empty of concentration, complete with cues of lightning flashes. You get the feeling Ryder is sizing Jim up, and on a rewatch of this scene, that he knows this is the small talk crap before the kill. Again. Jim is scared, Ryder is bored. But it's not that Hauer's Ryder scares you. It's the way his body language and line delivery work with the writing of the scene. As Ryder seems to make it sound like he was driving the Volkswagen that ran out of gas and that he's headed for the nearest station, there's a little moment of relief for Jim. But a few seconds later, he swivels it back, revealing that he just wants to get cigarettes there. And a few seconds later, laughing and revealing that he cut off the driver of that car's arms, legs, and head off. Ugh. And the performance never drops. With Hauer in the role, John Ryder stalks the Texas desert with a sick detachment. He's a man, or maybe not a man, which we'll get to, drawn to kill, but desperate for combat. And now for how the film is a semi-gory allegory, which adds 3 points. Ryder's origins are not explained. How he's able to continually find Jim remains mysterious, and much of his deadly work takes place off-screen. This lack of explanation might seem like a story element that has gone missing when, instead, the withholding gives the film power. In an interview with Joe Blow, writer Eric Red has said that while many fans believe Ryder is something supernatural, he is not. There are logical reasons why he can appear where he appears and follow Jim. However, he found that over the years, people kept coming up with their own theories about what he represents or how his relationship with Jim functions. So Red stopped explaining Ryder's origins and embraced the multiple interpretations of his creation. And I, like many fans, loved this aspect of the film. The movie looks like a setup for a common, predictable slasher. But with the ambiguity, for me, it's about dark fantasy. Jim finds Ryder mysteriously in the storm in a Texas desert, and then he pursues him like a supernatural force until Jim makes the choice to stand up to him. I'm not the only one with this view. According to the movie's IMDb trivia page, Rutger Hauer said critics misunderstood the film and that it's an allegory, and that Ryder represents evil. And I'll argue that even if Red intended otherwise, the supernatural helps the film's plausibility. Ryder takes blows that common men couldn't survive, only to get back at you. At one point, he shoots down a helicopter with a revolver. But this is even more over the top than it sounds. Not only does he nail the thing's rotor and send it to the ground, but he also fires at it while driving a truck in pursuit of Jim. So that's a kill shot on a helicopter from a moving vehicle while the man is driving said vehicle. Nuts. My theory is that Ryder is there to challenge Jim. He keeps killing people, but he does it in a tired, not another death I have to do fashion. When he holds a knife to Jim's neck in the opening scenes, he's asking him to try and stop him, telling him he has nothing to lose. And when Jim is able to throw Ryder from the open door of the car, you can see that he is pleased, seeing someone who could take him on and end his life. So when you view the movie from this otherworldly angle, it takes on a mythopoetic quality. And I loved that. Next, the film has few signals and no rules, which adds 2 points. The film is full of twists in the events, not the plot kind that feels contrived or simple filler to reach the runtime. This isn't, say, a group of kids who pissed off a killer who will, of course, whittle down their numbers until only a few or none is left for a final showdown. Not wanting to give these turns away, I'll tell you Jim's predicament gets deeper and deeper, and we feel uncomfortable as an audience whenever he seems safe, because experience with the movie has taught us he's most definitely not. And the film is not sexing, which adds 1 point. It might sound like weird praise, but I was relieved Jim and Nash didn't do the nasty. Or is it the Nash-ty in this case? Selling tickets without sex and nudity can be a bold move, and I hate when films jump into sex scenes just because. Besides, if there was a killer out there chasing a young boy and girl, would you really think the mood would be right for her to take her clothes off? Well, plenty of horror film has probably said yes to that question, but at least not this one. So, what did I think could be improved in The Hitcher? Well, characters. Nah, and that's going to take away 2 points. The film does drama, but not necessarily characters. Ryder is best left unexplained and menacing, again, much like Michael Myers. We get all we need to understand him from his actions and Hauer's performance. But I don't even remember why Jim was going to San Diego in the first place, and I have no idea what Nash hopes for her life. One defense I can make for the movie here is that had they tried to insert dialogue to reveal more about the characters, it could have come off contrived, drawing criticism. Another reason could be that, well, we don't really need to know more about them to advance the story. Still, the diner scene where the characters first meet and the hotel scene where the characters rest may have had room for more revealing lines. Anytime you can get your audience to know and care about a character that little bit more is a win. Still, just like they won't be in the mood for sex, both characters are shell-shocked at those times. So little points off for the lack of character building. And then, well, we know that's coming, which takes away 0 points. And a heads up, we have a major spoiler alert in this section. Use the chapter skip if you don't want to hear it. Still here? Okay. The movie avoided played-out horror tropes, but then it did the one they all seem to do. The big bad / monster not quite being dead and coming back for one last attack. At the finale, after ramming Ryder with a truck, Jim walks out and pokes Ryder with a shotgun a few times to ensure Ryder is dead. Come on. This guy is so bad that you just held up a cop and drove back to get him from a police escort, knowing they wouldn't be able to hold him. So for him to fiddle with Ryder a number of times, rather than just shoot him and be sure, bothered me. But it turns out the filmmakers had a better logic for this. It's said on IMDb's trivia page for the film that Jim walking over and shooting Ryder was the initial ending, but that was getting them an X rating from the MPAA. So they had to change it so Ryder got up and tried to attack Jim first, showing he still posed a threat. So fair play and no points removed, as this is interference's fault. So adding it all up, The Hitcher gets itself 12 points. On my scale of let's not watch, should I watch or go watch this movie? I'm gonna give it my go watch rating. The Hitcher is a dark fairy tale in a conventional slasher's clothing. It's scary, bloody, but with a blip of myth underpinning its nasty bits and chaos. It's a side-of-the-road western, an urban legend baked in desert country. Rutger Hauer's all-time villain performance should hook you, and the film's unexpected unraveling is a disturbing, can't look away ride I suggest you take. The legacy of The Hitcher. So what's the legacy of The Hitcher? The film has a cult following, which led to VHS, Laserdisc, and DVD releases, and more recently a 2024 Blu-ray and 4K restoration supervised by director Robert Harmon. And there are some super fans of the movie. It's said on Wikipedia that it is, or at least at one time was, one of Christopher Nolan's favorite movies, especially appreciating the talents of Rutger Hauer, though Nolan admits he finds the plot iffy. According to IMDb trivia, C. Thomas Howell admitted to being genuinely afraid of Rutger Hauer both on and off set because of his intensity. That's some effective casting. But what's funny is that Hauer's book, All Those Moments, mentions that executive producer Edward S. Feldman had settled on Sam Elliott as hitchhiker John Ryder. But apparently, Elliott was so scary that when he came in to audition, Feldman was afraid to go out to his car afterward. Sam Elliott backed out because of a scheduling conflict, and the role went to Hauer. Some people find this movie a lot like a Western, and I think, had Sam Elliott, who is in a lot of Westerns, been cast, you'd feel that even more. David Bowie, Sting, Sam Shepard, Harry Dean Stanton, and Terrence Stamp were also considered for the role of Ryder. I think Hauer is so good, but all those other actors could bring something a bit different to it if you wanted to take the film in another angle. Bowie's and Sting's, I could see as almost some kind of weirdo. Harry Dean Stanton as a creep would be something I'm sure he could do and would be maybe more vulnerable since he's less physically imposing? Maybe more mental. And of course, Terrence Stamp would be like the General Zod of Hitchers. No idea how Sam Shepard would play it, and no disrespect to him, as I'm sure he'd have done well. But the stunt driving on the film, much to the amazement of the crew and real stunt drivers. I wonder if that added even more to C. Thomas Howell's unease about the guy. But Hauer wasn't bulletproof. In a windshield stunt, the guy knocked out one of his teeth with the shotgun he was holding. Ouch. And a massive spoiler alert here, okay? For the rest of this legacy section, if you don't want something truly unexpected from this film ruined for you, quit now. Still with me? Okay. So, Nash's death was also said to be Hauer's idea. The original script had her being crushed against a wall by a truck, but Hauer convinced the director that she should be torn apart by the truck and trailer hitch. Ew. Hauer believed the sound of a revving engine would disturb audiences more, and I completely agree. Now, like C. Thomas Howell, I'm a little afraid of Rutger Hauer's instincts for scaring and intimidating people. Although I think it's worth pointing out that there's contradictory evidence about where that idea came from. If you read the film's Wikipedia page, you'll see a whole section discussing the original script being full of graphic violence, which did include a woman getting ripped in half, which was a battle with the studio. It also says that Hauer was opposed to taking the role specifically because of this scene. So I'm not sure what to believe on these conflicting accounts. I think maybe it is Hauer's idea to go back to ripping in half, but he didn't come up with it originally? Who knows? While C. Thomas Howell got the part of Jim, Matthew Modine from Full Metal Jacket, Tom Cruise from Tom Cruise, Emilio Estevez, of course, and Charlie Sheen, because when you have Estevez, you seem to always have Sheen, were also considered. One of the things I liked about The Hitcher is that it leaves out a lot of gory moments, but that wasn't the original plan. There were original plans for a scene of Ryder slaughtering a family, a graphic sex scene, a character decapitated, and an eyeball in the hamburger instead of a finger on the plate of fries. Jennifer Jason Leigh came on board to play Nash because she wanted to work with Hauer again after co-starring with him on Paul Verhoeven's Flesh and Blood from 1985, a year earlier. I did cover that movie in episode 45 of this podcast, if you're interested. But yeah, she loved the character of Nash because there was a real person there. And I feel I can see what Leigh means. I guess Jennifer Jason Leigh wasn't scared of Rutger Hauer because, as you may know, he, well, has a rape scene with her in Flesh and Blood, though he becomes a love affair, and tears her in half in this movie. Yikes. If you can believe this, and you can because it's on IMDb trivia, President George W. Bush was on the board of the company that lent money to HBO to finance the movie. So So in the 2000 presidential election, his critics talked about his involvement in this movie to discredit him on, quote, family values and his criticism of pervasive violence in Hollywood movies. Offering more proof that I don't know why they were ranked so highly as critics, it's worth mentioning again that Roger Ebert gave this movie 0 stars, and Gene Siskel denounced the movie for its violence. Ebert has said that the movie was too cowardly to admit its true subject matter, which is about gay sadomasochism. I don't see that angle, other than the guy in the beginning who thinks Ryder is touching Jim's crotch when really he's putting a knife up to it to keep him quiet. But to Ebert's credit, Jay Scott of the Globe and Mail said it was about gay panic. So this must be an interpretation others feel is valid. A piece of legacy from me? Well, I had no idea this whole drive-away car thing was a thing, but it is. You can find arrangements where you drive a car across the country in exchange for getting that ride. You have to cover the gas, though, it seems. I thought this was an 80s thing, but it looks like it still exists. And writer Eric Red has said in an interview on Joe Blow that he was delivering a car when he thought of that whole Riders on the Storm making a good movie intro idea. So it's just taken from his actual ride. And since this movie was released on February 21st, 1986, it just hit its 40th anniversary a few weeks ago, as I'm writing this. There look to be 2 movie posters for The Hitcher. The first one, which is what I usually see, has Ryder as a dark figure on the road with his thumb out. And I've got links to these in the transcript if you want to look at them, or you can just, search. There look to be 2 movie posters for The Hitcher. The first one, which is what I usually see, has Ryder as a dark figure in the road with his thumb out. Then we have Jim Halsey's eyes in a rearview mirror looking wide. I don't think it's a bad poster, as it gets the point across. But what I don't get is why we'd be seeing the Hitcher in front of us and Halsey's face in the rearview mirror, which would look behind? But I think continuity is less important than design, so I think this sells the film pretty well. And if you want to see this poster, I have links to this one and the other one in the transcript. The second poster is a lot weaker. It goes for an all-action approach, with Hauer holding a police shotgun as a giant explosion rumbles behind him. That is cool and all, but it looks more fitting for an action B-movie than a horror thriller. There was a sequel to the film called The Hitcher 2, I've Been Waiting. Waiting for what? I don't know, because he dies, but sorry, spoiler alert again. In Eric Red's interview that I mentioned, he said he has never seen and vows to never see this movie. So without Red's involvement, I'm already skeptical. And yeah, it's a direct-to-DVD film. I don't want to say that automatically means it's bad, but I read the plot summary and it seems awful. I don't even know if the Hitcher in this movie has a connection to the Hitcher of the previous film. C. Thomas Howell did come back for this sequel, joined by Kerry Werrer and Jake Busey. Then in 2007, there was a Michael Bay-produced remake. Remember when Michael Bay was, remaking lots of horror movies? This time, Sean Bean comes in as the Hitcher, which I can't really see. Boromir? I love Sean Bean as much as the rest of you do, but he's not quite right for it, at least on the surface. I should acknowledge I haven't seen it and can't say for sure. But the story was changed a bit, cutting Nash out and bringing in Jim's girlfriend. The movie has a 19% critical, 52% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes at time of writing, so most likely it's a dud. I've heard people didn't like it because they explain things much more, which would completely remove the appeal for me. Still, if you go to a Reddit thread on the film, you can find plenty of horror fans who rate it higher than the original. So don't just believe the bad press, I guess. Lastly, if you were wondering and didn't know, I wasn't sure, the scene where Ryder puts 2 coins on Jim's eyes is a reference to Charon, the ferryman who carries a dead person across the river Styx into Hades, which is Greek hell. IMDb's trivia page for the film suggests that Ryder is quite literally paying his respect to Jim as the man he chooses to end his life and suffering. I think that's more evidence for my interpretation of the film as a supernatural fairy tale, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, that's all I have for this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and if you haven't seen it yet, go check out The Hitcher. But if you have seen it, what's your take on The Hitcher? Is he a ghost, there to teach Jim some kind of sick life lesson? Is he just a crazy person who wants to die? I'd love to hear your theory. You can reach out and let me know on Blue Sky using the link in the transcript, or just search for Will Turntail. And if you like this episode, would you please take a minute or two to leave me a review or rating on this podcast if you haven't done that already? You will be my hero, I promise. Or if you're listening on YouTube, hit that like button and subscribe. New episodes of this podcast usually come out on Thursdays. I do not know what next week's episode will be yet, but whatever it is, I can guarantee you it's going to be cult and or classic. I hope you'll join me again next episode. This podcast episode is a production copyright of Over Egged Media LLC, located in Sacramento, California. Reference photos linked in the transcript are copyrighted by the Internet Movie Database. This review's factual information was gathered through online sources like Wikipedia, IMDb, or interviews. Misrepresentations and errors are possible, but unintentional. Introduction music, Neon Laser Horizon by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. And the exit music and additional music, they're also by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. They're also licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. And the names of those tracks are Voxel Revolution, Crypto, and Proto Funk. See you next time.